Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. We will start with a statement from the Secretary General and follow with your questions.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. Tomorrow, NATO defense ministers will gather, and this will be for the last time before our summit in Ankara in July. We will start today with a meeting of NATO's nuclear planning group with those allies involved, followed by a meeting of the North Atlantic Council at 32, where we will discuss final preparations for the summit. In the afternoon, there will be a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the UDCG, co-chaired by Germany and the United Kingdom. We have a lot to talk about. We continue to face a dynamic security environment, and allies are consistently working to ensure we are prepared to deter aggression and defend ourselves against any threat. And here, I really want to welcome the deal made by President Trump with Iran. The US action to prevent the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran and degrade its ballistic missile capability improves security for us all. And the deal President Trump struck has created an opportunity to ensure Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. The restoration of free passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be a massive step forward. And I know that many allies, through the initiative led by France and the United Kingdom, are ready to support. Looking to our agenda for defense ministers tomorrow, allies will demonstrate progress on building a stronger Europe in a stronger NATO. We need more forces, more resources, and a much stronger industrial base. That means making steady increases to defense investment and more fairly sharing responsibility for our collective security. Ahead of the summit in Ankara, allies will highlight how they are delivering on commitments made in The Hague last year, investing 5% of GDP in defense by 2035. That's what we agreed. So I expect nations to present clear, concrete and credible plans to reach that goal, ideally well ahead of the agreed timeline. And many are already showing that they are doing exactly that. The numbers are clear. We saw a massive increase in defense investment in 2025, with European allies and Canada increasing their core defense investment by over $90 billion. That is an astounding figure, amounting to a nearly 20% increase in a single year, with further increases already on the books for 2026. These significant investments are producing real capabilities. And we are already seeing that European allies and Canada are more capable and take more responsibility for our security. This includes taking on more key leadership roles in NATO's military structures, as well as shouldering more in the context of what NATO might need to deter in peacetime and defend in crisis or conflict. And here I want to highlight what is truly a sign of success in how NATO is evolving. You will likely have seen news of the US adjusting its contributions to the NATO force model. In some cases, this has been cast as a problem, as the US pulling away from its allies. But that is not the reality. The US has made clear that it is committed to NATO. That commitment comes with an expectation that allies will more fairly share the responsibility for our security here in Europe. They have made clear that the US nuclear deterrent is solid and that it is crucial that Europe and Canada do more on the conventional front, understanding that the US has obligations around the globe that it needs to account for. We have looked at the division of labor in the context of conventional forces. And we see that European allies and Canada are ready, willing and able to do more. Based on this, the United States has adjusted its pledges to the NATO force model. This is not primarily about where forces and assets are currently, but about who would do what if our defense plans were activated. Historically, this was overly reliant on the United States. Now, the US has adjusted its pledged contributions, and other allies have stepped up to contribute more. And this is fair. This makes us stronger. And this is what NATO 3.0 is all about. A stronger Europe in a stronger NATO. So we are seeing more investment, we are seeing better burden sharing. And we also know that as we increase investment, it's not the money alone that matters. We need to ensure our men and women have what they need to keep us safe. Ramping up defense investment means ramping up defense production. And we need this across the whole of the alliance, on both sides of the Atlantic. And we also know that the security environment is evolving, and NATO is evolving with it. We must harness the power of innovation. We are working hand in hand with industry to ensure that supply meets demand, so that this alliance maintains its cutting edge. NATO can do it because it's not just home to some of the biggest defense companies in the world, but also some of the most novel and innovative. This makes us stronger and more secure while also creating jobs and economic growth. It is a real win-win. Finally, with Russia's war in its 5th year, providing support to Ukraine remains a priority. Ukraine is demonstrating that the Russian war machine is not unstoppable and is shifting the dynamics on the battlefield. Together, allies have given billions in artillery and ammunition and aid, but it is crucial to continue this support to help Ukraine maintain its advantage. This will be my message at the UDCG. So as you can see, we have plenty on the agenda, and I will be back tomorrow to tell you how it went. But in the meantime, of course, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, let's start here in the second row, AFP.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Max Delaney from AFP.
How are you?
Coming back to...
Yes, hello, good to see you. Hi.
Coming back to the force model, which you gave a long explanation to. You didn't mention the timeline, though, for the US plans to reduce their commitments to the force model. Is this from tomorrow? These US assets would not be available if NATO's defense plans were activated, or is it over longer time to give the Europeans the ability to replace them? And if there is a war, you just said that the defense plans, the US will have a lesser role in it. Do you not expect the US to come all in Europe if there's a war with Russia?
Again, let me start by saying this is not about where forces and assets are currently located. It's about who would do what if our defense plans were activated. So let's say in case of an Article 5 situation. And what the Supreme Allied Commander SACEUR has said is that when it comes to the capabilities, the United States will no longer pledge. There are largely capabilities available that other allies already have or will have in the near future. And we have already seen that as the United States has adjusted its pledged contributions, other allies have stepped up to contribute more. In some cases, completely. In some cases, nearly. But there are also areas that require more work. But the overall picture is looking good.
Okay, next question. Let's go here, third row, second one in.
Hello, Secretary General. Melike Pala,
Good morning.
Anadolu Turkish News Agency. I have a question about the Strait of Hormuz, actually, because 2 days ago, during his meeting with Trump, French President Macron offered to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz if they were requested by the regional actors, including the United States, and also say that European forces could be rapidly deployed to the area. I wonder, what is the NATO's vision as well as position in this regard? Thank you.
Well, of course, this is legally and literally speaking outside NATO territory, but it is absolutely clear that United Kingdom and France are coordinating all of this. We are really seeing massive pre-deployment of assets over the last 2 months by European allies and others close to theater, particularly when it comes, for example, to demining, radar and other technologies necessary. And as I understand it, what I'm hearing from the G7 is that this was discussed. So what could this UK-French-led initiative with so many countries involved, what could they do post this whole deal, which has been struck between the United States and Iran, to make sure that they help to deliver on this commitment of making sure that the freedom of navigation is fully restored. But this is all in the making, but the good news is that these discussions are ongoing. Whether NATO will play a role there, yes or no, if helpful, of course, we will play a role, but if they can do it without us, also okay, so we are always ready to help if so wanted.
Okay, coming here, third row towards the center, Politico.
Hi, Victor Jack from Politico. Thanks for the press conference. I have a question on defense spending. So some allies' defense spending is set to flatline this year, while others, Czechia, Slovenia, Hungary, for example, is actually likely to fall below 2% of GDP this year. What's your message to these allies, given the commitments that they made last year? Thanks.
Well, again, when you look at the increases, they're really staggering. So in total, this is over 90 billion in 1 year. 2025, 90 billion more spent on defense than the year before. When you look at all 2%, almost all allies are on 2% last year. Albania, Czechia and Slovenia were not, but they have clearly committed to reach more than 2% this year. And then these 3 countries, when you look at the overall picture, it is a really small number. It's 800 million. They are not spending when it comes to the full 2%, compared to a total defense spend of $571 US. So 800 million, less than $1 billion US, compared to 571 US, including this over 90 billion increase, almost 20%. So this is really great news. And what we are getting in is reports from all allies that they are really ramping up. And we have seen so many already on the 5%, the 3.5%, the Germans reaching it in 2029, having doubled their defense spending compared to 2021, over 150 billion. So this picture really looks good. And it is necessary, because we have to defend ourselves.
Okay, second row, Reuters.
Thank you. Secretary General, you actually dodged Max's question on whether the reductions in US commitments to NATO's defense plans is effective immediately. Could you tell us whether these reductions are in effect as we speak now?
The problem is, on that specific question, it is very difficult to answer it as a yes or no, because this is not about, let's say, this is about the what and the when, if Article 5 will be triggered. So that means that the US saying we have adjusted our contributions to the NATO force model, that means that other allies have to step up, and there we see the picture positive, generally, which is some already filled, some nearly, some still more work to do. But it's not that you can answer that question with a yes or no. It's clear that the US has adjusted its commitment to the NATO force model, but it's in technical terms, it is not a yes or no.
And on those allies that you mentioned are stepping up right now, are you confident that all these capabilities that have been reduced by the US now will be backfilled by the Ankara summit?
Again, it's a very technically complicated issue, but what we are working on is to make sure that what the US has been providing so far will be filled, that we fill that gap, and again, that looks very good. Most of it, a lot of it done, some of it nearly, and some of it requiring more debate and discussion.
Okay, coming over here, second row on the aisle.
Hi, Isabel Schäfers, German TV ZDF. Just one short question on clarification, because you said that the USA no longer provides capabilities that the European allies can provide. Have they consulted before? So have they asked them what capabilities do you have? So which one can we take out? or was it a list that was just presented and now they have to go with it? And then my main question on the Strait of Hormuz, do you have any indications what the US actually requests from the allies in NATO, if like this French-UK initiative will be enough and quick enough?
Yes, on the first question, at a technical level, these discussions are going on for really some time now. It's one of the reasons, of course, why, as an alliance, we have committed to reach the 3.5% core defense spending as part of the overall 5% defense spending. Because it is fair that where the United States has to take care of multiple theaters, not only Europe, but, for example, also the Indo-Pacific, knowing that in case of a situation where they need their assets in both theaters, the assets will be spread too thinly. It's only fair, of course, that the Europeans take on a bigger share of the burden when it comes to the defense of Europe. As I said before, we have 600 million people living here. To defend ourselves against 140 million Russian population, now not the population, they are not a problem, but a country with 140 million people led by somebody who is an adversary of NATO and of Europe and the whole of NATO territory. And it's a bit strange that we still need so much help from another country, 8 hours flying from here on a plane with 350 million people to defend ourselves against 140 million. So that over time, the US stays involved conventionally, and of course when it comes to nuclear umbrella, but over time when it comes to these contributions to the NATO force model, that the Europeans take over a bigger share of the burden is totally right. This is part of the bigger discussion of the 5%, which we decided on in The Hague, which equalizes the defense spending in Europe with the defense spending in the United States, which is taking out this big pedal in the shoe of irritants on the US side since Eisenhower. It has been solved by President Trump and by the other 31 allies. When it comes to your second question, the French and the Brits are leading this coalition. The discussions are ongoing as far as I understand, but obviously this is not NATO leading it. It's very much a British-led initiative with, I think, over 40 countries now participating to help to make sure that the freedom of navigation is restored. And that discussion is ongoing. It has been discussed in the G7, as you have seen. And my understanding is that to a big part, this is about demining, because this is one of the big issues. The mines there, and the Europeans are sitting on a lot of demining capacities, which the US is lacking to that extent. So that is one of the areas where Europe has more than the United States. So I guess, going forward, we will see that discussion further evolving. But obviously, I know what's happening, we are listening in, but we are not leading it. This is really led by the French and the Brits with the Americans.
Okay, staying in the second row, third one in.
Good morning, Secretary General. My name is Ruslana Brянska, Громадське Radio Kyiv. What can Ukraine expect from the NATO summit in Ankara? And maybe is Ukraine likely to receive the proposed 70 billion euro in support?
Well, you already saw some very positive, I think, statements coming out of the G7 yesterday. I think also what the G7 agreed on Ukraine was extremely important, and let's welcome that. I at least would very much welcome what the leaders agreed on. And when it comes to Ankara, but also the defense ministers tomorrow, we'll focus particularly, of course, on what Ukraine needs to maintain the fight. And that is all the crucial flow of equipment into Ukraine. That's coming from Europeans, but also this flow of essential stuff which only the US is able to provide. For example, the interceptors for the Patriot systems, which are so crucial to defend your cities and your crucial infrastructure. And there is a big commitment on the US side, on the European side, to keep that flow going, to make sure the money is there. This is this famous Pearl program. We will have now the Ukraine support loan on the EU side kicking into gear, so that will help. I'm not going to give you numbers at this moment, but I'm pretty confident that collectively we'll make sure you have what you need as far as the Europeans and Americans can help to defend yourself.
All right, fourth row in the very center.
Thank you. A very good morning.
Good morning.
News agency Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sommer. Actually, follow up to my colleague question regarding Ankara summit. Can we expect NATO-Ukraine Council We know that Zelensky is invited already, but how about Council, and if yes, on which level? And by the way, why don't we have Council during this ministerial? Thank you.
Yes, well, during this ministerial, we already have a Ukraine Defense Contract Group meeting. We also have an NPG, so a Nuclear Planning Group meeting, so the program is already packed. And we had a NATO-Ukraine Council in Kiev only 2 weeks ago at the level of the ambassadors, which was a which was an impressive visit with the Ukrainian president being there and addressing all the questions and issues ambassadors raised. It was a moving experience to have that meeting in the presidential palace in Kiev. We assume for the Ukrainian president during the NATO summit to have a program similar to what we had last year in The Hague. So many meetings, but no sit down with all the 32 leaders, because we will have one session with the 32, which is at the level of the 32.
Okay, coming here, third row, Lithuanian public broadcaster.
Thank you. Good morning. Milda Velikanskytė from Lithuanian Public Broadcaster. I have a short follow-up what my colleague from Politico asked about spendings. We heard Czechia's Prime Minister Babiš saying that his country will miss 2% this year, but he don't see here any problem because he's in a good relationship with Donald Trump. So I want to ask you, do you think it is enough to have good relationship with Donald Trump not to reach what agreed? And I have a question on nuclear deterrence. We know that already 9 countries joined France's initiative of nuclear umbrella. Would you say that this initiative is an ambition to one day be able to replace United States with nuclear weapon, or it could be as addition to what we have already? Thank you.
Well, that's not the ambition of the French initiative. So I very much welcome the French initiative. It creates an additional strategic dilemma to the Russians. But it's not to replace the nuclear umbrella from the United States, which is the ultimate guarantor of our freedom in Europe. So that will stay in place. But the French nuclear capability, of course, being important, not being formally part of the NPG process, because the French have decided to stay out of that. But of course, we regularly update, we know what's happening, and this latest initiative by the French president, I think, is welcomed by all the countries involved, including the United States. And also the French made clear this has nothing to do with replacing the US nuclear umbrella. When it comes to your first question, without commenting on individual leaders, I have a very good relationship with Andrej Babiš. We know each other for many years. And I know that the Czech Republic is as committed as everyone to what we decided in The Hague. Czechia did not reach the 2% last year, but I know that the Czech government is working very hard to make sure that when it comes to a credible trajectory, it will be there.
Okay, we're going to go to the back now.
Thanks a lot, Thomas Gutschka with Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. I'm up here.
Yes, hi.
Yes, hi. A question on deprecision strikes. It appears that with the US decommitments to the NATO force model, this issue becomes front and center now of discussions among member states. Yet, 2 years ago in Washington, an initiative was already started by 4 countries, meanwhile 6. So far, we have seen nothing concrete from that. ELSA, it was called. So I'm wondering, does it need more steering from NATO? And what is your thinking about deprecision strike capabilities? How important is this, and what kind of capabilities does NATO need to develop, or European allies need to develop, to replace some of the US effects?
Thank you for that question. When it comes to the NATO force model, I've seen some reporting on numbers and all that. As you know, we never comment on that, because we will never make our enemies wiser on what we are doing. So all that reporting, of course, that's the media. You can do that, but we will never comment on it, because we want to make sure that we keep a maximum of secrecy and keep it a secret to what we are doing, etc. When it comes to concrete numbers. When it comes to DPS, of course, that is an important part of your overall portfolio of systems and weapons we have at our disposal as NATO. And there's always, when it comes to all these systems, there is a division of labor, who is doing what. I know the ELSA initiative, I know what the previous US administration agreed with Germany. So of course we are looking very much into that, trying to, wherever we can be helpful, to participate in those discussions. But also there, I have to tell you that I have to do that with a little bit holding back on telling you everything we are doing, because also here, this news press conference, of course, might also be listened in by the people to whom this might be directed, if necessary, when we have to defend ourselves.
All right, let's come over here, third row in TV.
Yes, Secretary General Gül from NTV Turkey. I have two short questions. So Max raised the timeline issue. There is a timeline issue with regards industrial production. At the time when US is scaling down its presence in Europe, European defense industries are like a bit like Chanel or Yves Saint Laurent. So the quality is tremendous, but the production is limited. So this is creating a gap, particularly for the appetite of Russia, a growing appetite for Europe. So do you think that in due course, 2-3 years, we are able to ramp up this production? And second question is with regard, for the last 6 months, there was some ups and downs in relations between the two sides of the Atlantic. Since now there is an agreement on Hormuz, do you think that the Ankara summit will be a kind of, you know, kiss and hugs amongst the ally or not?
Well, on the first question, we have that problem across the alliance. I don't mean the Chanel problem, but I mean the lack of defense industrial output. So I leave the Chanel comment with you, but when it comes to the overall defense industrial output, this is a problem for the whole of the alliance. The United States, Europe, Canada, we all are facing this issue because we are not producing enough. I have every confidence that with all the extra money coming in, look at the over 90 billion extra Canada and Europe spending on defense in 2025, which is really staggering, which is historical. And again, when I look at the numbers coming in for 2026, and we know that a big part of that will be spent on defense industrial output, this means that companies like in Turkey, where you have, I think, over 3,000 defense industrial companies, they know the market is there. The same for the German, the French, the Dutch, and all the other defense industrial bases in Europe and Canada and the United States. What I'm concentrating on is two things. One is to make sure that we ramp up the production. And yes, I'm confident that we will be able to do that in time to make sure we are strong. We are strong at the moment, but also in the mid and the longer term, we can defend every inch of NATO territory. The second thing I'm working on is to make sure that it's transatlantic. Because Europe cannot do it alone, the US cannot do it alone. We need each other when it comes to the investments, when it comes to the innovation, when it comes to making sure that you figure in the latest technologies, for example, learning from Ukraine on drone technology. We have to do this together. And also with Europe, it's important that countries like Turkey and Norway and the United Kingdom are participating as much as possible in what Europe as a whole is doing, again, in a transatlantic spirit. On your second question, this is a democratic alliance. That means you will always have debates. And that's what makes us so strong. But you also know that now for 77 years, we always come together. And we find common ground. Because this is about our defense, which is task number one of every government. And we are there to defend the United States, Canada, Europe, to make sure that nobody could ever mount a successful attack against us.
Okay, let's come over here. Fourth row, Terry.
Thank you very much, Terry Schultz with DW. Hi. Are you concerned by reports most recently voiced by Kaja Kallas that China is training Russia, that the involvement of China is greater than was previously known? I mean, they're not. Is this lethal assistance or not?
We are constantly trying to follow exactly what China is doing. Of course, we know already that Russia is not alone, that they get vital support from North Korea, from China, from Iran, that these 4 countries are closely working together and that there are mutual agreements, maybe not always legally on paper, but who is doing what for the other and what do you get in return. For example, when it comes to North Korea, they are getting vital ballistic missile technology from the Russians in return for their support for the war effort of Russia, this crazy war of aggression against Ukraine. When it comes to China, what we know, of course, is the sanctions circumvention, the dual-use goods, etc. We are not naive. We follow everything exactly. I cannot tell you more at this moment, or at least in this open press conference, but you can be assured that we follow every... yeah, so we have to do this in a private meeting, but then still you want to report it, so I might still have to hold back a bit.
Okay, and just next to her in the green.
Good morning, Alice Tidy for Euractiv. I want to go back briefly to the Ukraine fund. Has the US indicated that it plans to participate in this fund? Because I understand they stopped all donations to Ukraine a couple of years ago, so will they put money on the table? And then second question, apart from this fund, which could be one of the main deliverables of the summit, what does, with 3 weeks away, what does a successful summit outcome look to you?
For me, the most important thing is that, and again, I think you can already see it today from the G7 statement, is that the Western world, all NATO allies are completely committed to make sure that Ukraine maintains its position in the fight against Russia, is able to defend itself, is able whenever it comes to peace negotiations, to have these negotiations from a position of strength. That's what we are aiming for. When it comes to the money part, the US has been very clear that they continue to provide all the essential help for Ukraine as they have been doing in the past, including when it comes to weapon systems only the US can provide. For example, when it comes to the air defense systems from Patriot and other systems. And this is this Pearl program, which is paid for by European and Canadian allies. So I think the US rightly said, we are not going to put in the money there. Sometimes you have Congress deciding on amounts of money for Ukraine, but when it comes to the big money needed in bucks, big sums of money needed for Ukraine, it's coughed up by the Europeans and Canada, but crucial that the US keeps on supplying that. Even today, with all the pressure when it comes also on the United States to make sure that they can maintain all theaters they are active in, this vital support of interceptors continues flowing into Ukraine, but paid for by Europeans and Canada. Now, I tried to answer that to saying, for me, the successful outcome is that there is an absolute ironclad commitment by the whole of the alliance, as we did in The Hague, and what you've seen since The Hague with the Pearl program, with all the support still going into Ukraine. Ukraine also sharing more and more of their battlefield insights with the Europeans, Canada and the United States, for example, through our joint center in Poland, JTEC, but also other ways to basically share all these insights when it comes to drone technology and modern warfighting, where NATO also can learn, of course, and Ukraine can still learn from NATO. So this is exchanging all these insights. It is still investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base, making sure the Czech ammunition initiative is up and running, Pearl is up and running, making sure that all the bilateral support is there, and particularly focused on the concrete needs of Ukraine. So not just on what countries might be able to provide, but really reacting to and acting on the concrete demands from Ukraine when it comes to what they need to stay strong.
Coming over here, second row, Deutsche Welle.
Ksenia Polska, morning, it's still morning, I'm checking. Ksenia Polska, Deutsche Welle, Russian and Ukrainian service. Secretary General, considering the need for the European allies to take over more responsibility from the United States and invest more in their own defense, how do you make sure this does not compete with continuous military support to Ukraine?
It doesn't, to be honest. I think we can do it. It has to be and everybody realizes that on the one hand, we have to make sure that the support for Ukraine is there, in terms of the money needed to get the weapon systems, to make sure we produce them on time if we do not have them in our stockpiles. But at the same time, making sure that we build up as rapidly as possible our own. I think, are you from Poland yourself?
No, I'm from Ukraine.
You're from Ukraine? But I think, well, Ukraine, of course, is a case in point that you, under immense pressure of a full war effort, where so many Ukrainians are paying the ultimate price, that you were able to maintain the country in that fight against an adversary which is much bigger. Now, maintaining this longer, this fight than the First World War, 4.5 years now, is testament of your immense resilience. But when you look at Poland, for example, it's also clear Poland is rapidly ramping up its defense production, is rapidly ramping up its defense expenditure, making sure that they can defend themselves. At the same time, they continue their support for Ukraine. So, just one example, sorry, I thought you were from Poland, but Poland as an example of how this support is maintained.
Okay, we're nearly out of time, but we'll take just a few more questions. We'll come to the center here in the third row.
Hi, good morning.
I insist it's morning. Alexandra Filipenko, The Breakfast Show, a Russian independent media in exile in Lithuania. So Ukraine is now successfully striking deep inside Russia thanks to its own technologies. But in Washington, especially after the Sunday talks with President Zelensky and with Putin, Washington expressed that those strikes might hinder peace talks. What does NATO want? To Ukraine to continue the pressure or to hold back for those talks?
Well, let's start with answering the question why Ukraine is doing this. This is because Ukraine, on the 23rd, 24th of February 2022, was confronted with a Russia which started a full-scale invasion. Of course, after already in 2014 starting the war with capturing Crimea. And this was unprovoked, totally reckless. And of course, Ukraine has to defend itself. This is what we all think and find and do, and try Ukraine to help with. And I think the G7 statement yesterday, signed by all the heads of state and government present in this beautiful French town, is very clear on this. So maybe I can just refer to the statement. And I think it gives you the clarity that we agree on this, that we have to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to stay strong.
All right, fourth row over here.
Good day, Lana Gilošević from Blitz Television from Serbia.
Morning.
Last week, NATO stated that security situation in Kosovo is stable, allowing the adjustment of optimization of the KFOR mission. What does that exactly mean, and does that mean in the ground? And what the situation is going to look like, especially if we speak about Serbian minority in North Kosovo?
Yeah, so a good question. When you look at the security situation in Kosovo, what we're seeing over the last years is that it has continued to improve. So that's good news. And that is why NATO ceased in January the deployment of reserve forces to the Kosovo force. And this is after 2 years of continuous rotation. And at the same time, we are constantly looking at what is the best posture for KFOR going forward. At this moment, you see that KFOR has an overall size of about 4,700 troops. What we will do is go back to the pre-2023 levels. Of course, and depending on the circumstances, you will see a KFOR going forward with between 3,000 and 3,500 troops. And that is, I think, reflecting the improved security situation, where the KFOR mission, of course, stays absolutely focused on its core mission.
Coming to the first row here.
Good morning, Secretary General. Ida Hallikainen for Ilta-Sanomat, Finland. President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, has spoken about reopening channels of communication with Russia. Last week he said that contact should be established within the coming months. What is your view on this, and what might a future dialogue with Russia look like?
Yeah, clearly this is something debated among allies, absolutely. You also see this discussion in the European Union. Of course, the President of Finland is also participating in those discussions, the Prime Minister and the President. At the moment, this is not a discussion we are having in NATO at the political level. It's really a discussion playing out in the EU at the moment. Of course, we are following that and will be supportive wherever we can.
Okay, final question. Second row here, gentleman in the blue jacket.
Daniel Tkia, Ukrainian TV. Hi. Does Ukraine have a stronger hand right now, both at the negotiating table and on the battlefield? And after this G7 summit this week, is President Trump moving closer to Ukraine's position? What is your feeling? Are you more positive about US position in that?
Well, to be honest, I've always been positive about the US position because I always felt and still think and have the conviction that it is only the United States who was able to break the deadlock originally when President Trump came back into office last year, February. He consistently has been working with his team, with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Marco Rubio, with Pete Hegseth to do everything possible to bring this terrible war to an end. When you look at the battlefield situation, obviously it has changed somewhat in terms that Russia is not making advances at the moment on the battlefield, it seems, and you are doing well in the battle. It's not that you are getting big pieces of land back, but at least the front line is more stable, and the advances by the Russians have been halted much more than, let's say, 2 or 3 months ago. So, of course, that's important, and we are seeing that you are able, as Ukraine, to kill or seriously wound between 30 and 35,000 Russians a month, which are really impressive numbers. Of course, terrible for the families, etc., of all the men in the Russian armed forces. But hey, Ukraine didn't ask for them. You have to defend yourself. So this is what happens in wartime, and you are extremely successful in doing this. And that means that Russia has more and more problems to refill all those gaps in their armed forces necessary to maintain the fight in Ukraine. And the numbers, when you compare them, I said it before, it's really staggering, because 30 to 35,000, that's basically in 3 weeks what the Russians lost in Afghanistan in the 1980s, in 10 years. They now lose in 3 weeks. It is in 5 weeks what America had in casualties in Vietnam in 15 years. In 5 weeks now, Russia is losing those numbers in Ukraine, in fighting Ukraine. So on all these fronts, I think Ukraine is really doing better. But still, I think we all want this war done and to bring it to a peace deal. But to get there, you need two to tango. Your president is willing to tango, is willing to get to a negotiating table, but clearly the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, so far is not. And here the American president is, I think, playing a very positive role now for a year and a half in trying to get this war done. He wants to get it done, and I completely support him.
All right, that's all we have time for now, but we will be back this afternoon with the Prime Minister of Latvia. You can join us very early tomorrow morning for the doorstep before the ministerial meeting, after the ministerial tomorrow afternoon.
At that crazy early hour.
7:10, we'll see you then. All right, thanks everyone.
See you later, thanks.